So today I'm going to talk about Chiang Mai versus Phuket. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons to both. I'm going to talk about the differences of both, and I'm going to discuss which is a better place to live and which is a better place to visit. So to start off, I'm going to talk about Phuket, and I'll talk about Chiang Mai later, but I'm going to talk about Phuket, its pros and cons, what's good and what's bad about it. So, Phuket is an island that's in the south of Thailand. Phuket is small. It's smaller than Taiwan. It's probably about 40 to 50 miles from the north to the south. You can ride a motorbike pretty much all across it. But Phuket has different areas, like it's got the airport in the far north. It's got Surinat National Park, which is more in the north. That's the more calm, peaceful area. It's got Kamala, which is like family-friendly beaches. It's got Patong. Patong is also probably one of the most expensive places. Patong is very touristy. Patong is where you go if you like the nightlife, the bars, the clubs, and the beaches at the same time. There's also Kata Beach, which is kind of like Patong, except maybe a little bit more family-friendly. There's Rawai in the far south, which is much quieter. There's lots of really good seafood down in Rawai. And then, more in the middle is Phuket town, and that's where you would go if you're really interested in the culture. Phuket town is like the cultural hub. And it's also probably the most local part of Phuket, I would say. Phuket town has a lot of Sino-Portuguese architecture in it, which I think makes the place look really amazing. So Phuket is all around a very beautiful travel destination. Chiang Mai is very beautiful too, but I'm going to talk about Chiang Mai later. For now, I'm talking about Phuket. Some of the pros to Phuket. The first thing that I think is an absolute pro is the weather. There's a lot less pollution in Phuket, and because you're right by the beach, it doesn't get as obnoxiously hot in the hot season as Chiang Mai does. So you can get an ocean breeze, which really helps you keep cool. The weather in Phuket is absolutely beautiful, especially by the ocean. And it doesn't get cold either. The next pro is that there's lots of English in Phuket. So pretty much everybody you run into, at least everybody I ran into, spoke some English. Not saying everybody in Phuket speaks English, but if you don't know Thai and you only speak English, you should be just fine in Phuket. The third one is that the roads are generally pretty safe, so you can ride a motorbike from place to place pretty easily. Now, there are some pretty dangerous intersections in Phuket, but generally speaking, I think the roads are quite safe. The next pro is that you're right by the ocean, so you can swim on the beach every single day. You can rent a jet ski, you can go snorkeling, and there's lots of different island tours that you can take in Phuket, so I think being by the ocean is a huge pro. Now let's talk about the cons. So, the first con that I'm going to get into about Phuket is that it felt like a big tourist trap. It seems like left and right there are people that try to scam you. I mean, you can't avoid it, but Phuket is fast-paced, and there are a lot of people that will try to sell you stuff and charge you premiums. Even with taxis and other things like that, transportation, people will often try to charge a premium. The next con is that different places in Phuket are generally far away from each other, so unless you have a motorbike or a car, it can be very expensive to get from one place to another in Phuket. Like, say, for instance, going from Patong to Rawai, that could be 700 baht, $20 easy. Or the Phuket town, that could be like another 600 baht maybe. So, yeah, things are far from each other in Phuket. The next con is that things are expensive in Phuket. Everything has to be shipped in because it is an island. Things are generally much more expensive in Phuket, maybe 50 to 60% more than they are in the mainland because of that. And on top of that, Phuket is a big touristy resort type of island, so because it caters to foreign tourists mostly, things are likely more expensive. I would say in places like Patong, restaurants there, especially Western restaurants, are very close to the same price you'd be paying in America or Western Europe. Although there are some cheap, more affordable places you can find in Phuket, local places, if you look hard enough. The next con is that it's more difficult to find a taxi or or a ride somewhere if you're just out walking and you need to get to another place. They are not always readily available for you in Phuket. If you're at the hotel, they can call one for you, but if you're just on the street, it might be difficult to wave one down. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about Chiang Mai. So, Chiang Mai is a very different place. Chiang Mai is a city in the north of Thailand. It is more in a mountainous region. So Chiang Mai has a different type of climate. It's more subtropical. Phuket is tropical. And Chiang Mai has 3 different seasons. There's a hot season, a rainy season, and a cool season. Cool season is kind of like winter, except milder because it doesn't snow, it just gets a little chilly. But first I'm going to talk about the pros of Chiang Mai. The first pro is that it is much more relaxed than Phuket. It is a lot slower paced than Phuket. Like, you can walk around Chiang Mai and there's not people left and right trying to throw brochures in your face and take you on tours that you don't necessarily want or sell you things that you don't want. Oftentimes, if you want to buy something in Chiang Mai, you'll go find it yourself. Another pro is that since you're in the mainland, if you rent a motorbike, there's a wider selection of places that you can go. Like, you can ride a motorbike to Doi Inthanon or to Doi Poi. You could even go north to Chiang Rai. So another pro is that you've got easy access to more places. The next thing I'm going to mention is that things are very cheap in Chiang Mai. Even though Chiang Mai is still a somewhat touristy place with lots of expats, the prices are still more or less normal Thai prices, which is not the case in Phuket where they price things at a huge premium. Chiang Mai has things priced more like the normal Thailand prices. Another pro of Chiang Mai is that I think there's more classes, courses, and clubs that you can attend. Like, you can take a cooking class there, there's also different entrepreneurship classes that you can take if you're wanting to start your own business. So there's definitely more classes and courses in Chiang Mai. Another pro is that you've got easy access to transportation if you need a taxi or a red car. Like, the red cars are a very common way people get around Chiang Mai, where it's sort of like a shared car you share with others and you tell the guy where to go. And the red cars are usually much cheaper than taxis, so the red car is a great way. And they've got little tuk-tuks as well, but that's usually more expensive because it caters to just you. But yeah, transportation is easier to come by in Chiang Mai. Another pro is that I feel Chiang Mai is much more local. You've got much easier access to local Thai culture that live the local ways of life, as opposed to it just being a touristy trap, catered primarily to tourists. The center of Chiang Mai is dominated by expats, but you don't have to go far in order to see local ways of life and local Thai traditions when you're in Chiang Mai. Alright, so what are the cons of being in Chiang Mai? The first con is going to be pollution. When you get to around March or April, there's a lot of people burning crops and other things like that. So that causes a lot of pollution in the air. And the pollution in Chiang Mai can be very bad at that time of year. If you go like during June, July, August, or later than that, it's usually not bad at all. But March, April, and maybe May, pollution can be horrific. The next con of being in Chiang Mai is that there's no beach. So if you want to go swimming in the ocean, yeah, you're nowhere near it. Another con of being in Chiang Mai is that the weather might not be as nice. It can get very hot during parts of the year and it can get chilly during the cool season. But still, the weather is pretty nice mostly in Chiang Mai. The next con is that I think in Chiang Mai the roads can be very dangerous at times. So if you want to ride the motorbike, you do have to be careful, especially because in recent years Chiang Mai has been getting bigger. changing from being a small town to being a big city, so there are a lot of traffic jams, and it can be especially bad at rush hour. I have seen a few motorbike accidents in Chiang Mai, sadly. I even know a few people that were in them. Yeah, just be careful in Chiang Mai. Alright, so to wrap it up, which place do I think is a better place to visit, Phuket or Chiang Mai? That depends on you, really, but I think if you could only go one place for a week, I think that Chiang Mai would be the better place to visit, because I think you could have a slightly more in-depth experience of the country. You could spend your trip going through the mountains, visiting places like Doi Sutep. You could go to Doi Inthanon. You could go to lots of different temples. You could ride the elephants. You could meet the local hill tribes. I just think you could have such a rich experience here in Chiang Mai, even for just 1 week. Which place do I think is a better place to live long term, like as an expat? My vote is Chiang Mai. And the reason why is because it's a lot cheaper than Phuket. You can rent an apartment for less money. You can eat for a much lower cost. And the cost of taking a tour or a class is generally cheaper. So yeah, I think that Chiang Mai is all around the better place to visit and the better place to live. But of course, if you're wanting to take your family on vacation, maybe you've got kids and you want them to swim on the beach, maybe have access to island tours, then Phuket might be the better option for you. But overall, I think Chiang Mai is the better place to live and to visit. So if you found this video helpful or interesting, please subscribe, give a thumbs up, leave a comment below. Check out these links to some of my other videos. Feel the burn for Bernhardt's World, and take care, everybody.